The Democrats' legislative agenda has stalled in Congress. That could be the understatement. The midterms are looming large, so enter Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, the senator from Vermont, thinks the party can still win over the working class voters by forcing Republicans and some of his fellow Democrats to vote against progressive policies. BNC's political contributor Ameshia Cross is back with us to talk about it. We call it naming and shaming where I come from, but it might actually work in this case.
See, you have a little bit more faith, Dale, than I do. Republicans don't care about voting against these bills. They're on record for voting against COVID-19 relief, and it hadn't hurt them in any of the districts that they happen to run in. Obviously COVID-19 relief passed, and many of them went around touting the successes of it in their communities, even though they didn't support it. It does not hurt Republicans to go on record voting against things that help the American public, things that actually even help many of their constituents, because their constituents are so, dug into the big lie. They're so dug into issue-based rhetoric around anti-abortion and things like that, that those are the only things that they're voting on. So the naming and shaming, although we've seen it work in the past in regards to, certain issues, at the current point with where the Republican Party is right now, I don't think it's going to make a darn bit of difference.
They keep showing this image of Joe Manchin, and he is supposed to be representing the working class citizens of the great state of West Virginia, and yet he lives on a yacht on the Potomac. He has a private plane, I do believe, and he drives a Maserati. So you may be right in the sense that if they can't shame Joe Manchin to deal with voting rights and things like child tax credits, where his state really needs them, is Bernie Sanders simply wasting his time?
Yes. In no uncertain terms, he absolutely is. I understand why he's doing it, just because of what the optics are going to look like, or what he hopes the optics will look like when this is run through media circles. But at the end of the day, conservatives are going to vote how they vote in alignment with their party, which stands on, oppressing Americans. And for people like Joe Manchin, he's only concerned with winning his reelection. His reelection runs and coincides with the 2024 presidential campaigns. So he knows that his base voted largely in support of Donald Trump in 2020. And if he was to run again in 2024, they would vote in lockstep with him again. So it does not hurt Joe Manchin to align with many of those conservative priorities and conservative beliefs as well, because that's his base.
Why do we write off Bernie Sanders? When you look at campaign crowds, guess who had the biggest crowds other than Donald Trump? It was Bernie Sanders. It was all those people who said they wanted to feel the burn. He has a movement behind him. Just ask Elizabeth Warren. So are Democrats ignoring Bernie Sanders at their peril?
I don't think so. If the Democratic primary is to show us anything, it's that Bernie Sanders and much of Bernie Sanders' ideology, to the chagrin of many progressives, is not one that is shared by a majority of the moderates who happen to be the people who show up for these elections. So I think that it matters to have working class ideas and working class policies and protection of the working class, protection of our and an expansion of our child care system and child care access to individuals. A lot of these are policy priorities that matter no matter where you stand on the political spectrum. But Bernie Sanders may not be the best messenger.
I mean, it used to be that you could shame politicians. You could get them to take a vote, and then during the midterms or during the general election, you would see the commercials saying they voted against child care. They don't love your children. They don't love America. They would show the waving flag and the amber waves of grain. What happened to those days? Is there any issue right now that if you want the Republicans to come over to your side if you're a Democrat, or if you want a Democrat to come over to your side if you're a Republican, that still counts, that still matters?
The only one where we're seeing bipartisan effort on, and the only one that I think will continue to see bipartisan effort on, is the military industrial complex. We've seen that both sides have come together on that. But other than that, this hyper-partisanship, I don't think is going to go away anytime too soon. Republicans have dug in their heels on issues of race, and they know they can win elections on that. They've dug in their heels on being anti-immigrant. They've ensured that they can win elections on that. And I believe that at this point, because there's so much around the dysfunction of American and American democracy, that Republicans don't have to come to the Democratic side, because they recognize that they're going to continue to win elections over and over and over again, regardless of if they come to and support a lot of the policies that over 70% of Americans support. We know that through the Build Back Better agenda. Americans, both left and right, support that agenda. However, Republicans can still run and win elections within their districts without ever having sided with or even come to the table to have discussions about the Build Back Better agenda.
Have they no shame anymore? I mean, I think about Ted Cruz and the fact that Donald Trump insulted his wife and his father. Then he decides in the middle of an ice storm in Texas to fly down to Cancun. We have Republicans that are running for office saying that they voted for the aid package, the care package, when they didn't. Where is shame when it comes to running for office these days?
It's gone. It's gone. As long as voters don't respond to shame, then the people who are running will not respond to shame. There was a lot of push against what we saw during the Trump administration, not only with the separation of children from their families, but also with the lies and rhetoric about bringing coal back, with some of the statements he made about women, with some of the statements he made about Black people and the remember the shithole countries comments. At the end of the day, we still saw a large percentage of the American public that went out and cast their vote for Donald Trump. He got more Republican votes than any Republican who's ever run for president in the history of this country. So I don't think that shaming works in the historical sense of it, because people again have decided to align around their fiefdoms. And for right now, and I project out for the, for the near term future, they're not going to move on those things. Shaming is not what we think it is. We tried to shame people into the COVID-19 vaccine and that didn't work either. I think that shaming is a convention that we might need to abandon because it is not working.
Thank God you're smarter than me, because you can explain this one. Are Republicans still the party that backs the blue after the insurrection, when we saw officers dying trying to defend the Capitol and not one shows up for funerals or memorial service or votes to give them medals?
Absolutely not. Republicans only backed the blue when it meant backing anti-civil rights, when it meant backing fighting against Black Lives Matter protests. They're fine with backing the blue as long as Black people are the ones who are getting their heads bludgeoned and getting shot in the streets. That is what this is about. It was always cruxed in race. It was not cruxed in backing the blue in general. Because if that was the case, we would not have seen them supporting Ashley Babbitt in her actions. We would not have seen them supporting or coming out full throttle in trying to make January 6th disappear or act like it was just a regular tourist day in DC, when we all know that that was not the case. We saw what happened at the Capitol. But backing the blue is not what the Republican Party was ever doing. What they were doing was fighting against Black Lives Matter. What they were doing was fighting against the rights of Black people to not have police officers abuse them on a regular basis.
BNC's contributor, Ameshia Cross. Ameshia, as always, I can't stand the fact that you always mince your words. I wish you would just get to the point and say what is on your mind. I want to thank you for being with us again.